Welcome to the Alchemy, Astrology, and Astro Health podcast. I'm Ira Atla, medical astrologist, astroherbalist, and green witch. I was diagnosed with endometriosis at 19, and I was told I would never have children. I healed my body through the power of herbs, alternative health practitioners, energy healing, and more. At 28, I had the baby they said I would never have, without any interventions. I refused to believe that my body was not able to heal itself. Along this journey, I stumbled across medical astrology, and it resonated with me so much. I started down the path to learning this unique system that had been used for thousands of years in the medical community. I now help other women heal their bodies using their cosmic blueprint, the unique blueprint that every person has embedded in their DNA from the stars. This system helps me see what's going on in your body on a cosmic level and exactly how to help you give your body what it needs to heal itself. We are all uniquely and amazingly designed, and when we learn to work with our design, love ourselves for how we are designed to function, and integrate the cosmos into our lives, I truly believe that we can see true and lasting health brought into our lives. If you are ready to change your life, heal your body, and learn to deeply love who you are, this podcast is for you. Come join me as I discuss medical astrology, astronutrition, astroherbalism, health, wellness, spirituality, transformation, and so much more. I'm so excited you are joining me. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Alchemy, Astrology, and Astro Health. I'm Ira Atla, I'm your host, and today we are going to be continuing our Medical Astrology 101, The Planets series with Mars. So Mars in medical astrology. This is one of my favorite planets, even though it is one of the troublemakers in natal charts. Which can definitely make a difference, right? It is a hot, hot, hot planet, and it brings with it so many different potential health concerns. But if you do want to start making changes in your life and change things that are, not where you'd like them to be, Mars is a really good one to lean into in your chart, right? Because it's the planet of action and it helps us move forward in our life. So let's dive into Mars, shall we? Speaking of which, March is named after Mars. So see, my brain is already jumping ahead to things that I wanted to say earlier. I wanted to say in this podcast. All right, so we're going to talk about the planet itself. We consider it the red planet because if you've ever seen any pictures of the surface, y'all know that it is called that for a very good reason. The planet is actually red, and this is really due to the large iron deposits in the surface, the soil. I don't know if it's actually considered soil, but in the dirt there is, whatever it is lots of iron, and so it makes it look red. This corresponds to the iron in the blood, which, as everybody knows, if you cut yourself and you start bleeding, your blood is red also. And this is due to the iron content in our blood. So Mars is also known as the classic yang energy, the masculine active energy planet, right? This is the one that when people think of that masculine, active, yang energy, this is the one they typically go to. And we see this personified in Mars because of its association with the warrior in battle. Mars was actually, a god of war. They named the planet after him. And so we kind of see that association with the warrior in battle. We also see it being related to anger, frustration, overall intensity. This is where we get martial arts from. We see violence coming from this. So we've all probably heard the saying as well, right, that men are from Mars. And well, this is because throughout history, men have classically been associated with those previous qualities that I went over, right? Anger, frustration, intensity, violence. Being warriors and in battle. And men who were the opposite of those qualities, they were not always given the respect and admiration that their quick to anger warrior peers were, right? And we still see this in modern times in many societies. And it does a disservice to men to treat them as if they're only capable of showing one emotion, right? Anger. And not that they have the ability for a range of emotions and feelings, which they do. And so to get that, men can really embrace their Venus and their moon placements just as much as women, and they should. It's not good for anybody, male, female, however they identify, to be only, one emotion all the time. And anger is not a good emotion to have all the time, because let me tell you, it will send you to an early grave. There's all kinds of studies that show that people that are constantly angry and whatever have a higher tendency of high blood pressure, heart attacks, stress-related illnesses, etc., right? So definitely not a good thing to just be angry all the time. We see one of the main words used to describe Mars being action. And boy, does this planet take action in the body. Sometimes it can take too much action, which can lead to inflammation and then disease down the road, right? Mars does have a twofold nature, though, so that can kind of help when we're looking into whether or not someone has too much or too little Mars and how to balance that out, right? So it's hot like the sun, though in medical astrology it's actually considered hotter than the sun, but still it's similar, right? Hot like the sun, but it's also dark like the underworld, which is similar to Pluto, which we also see considered like a higher octave of Mars in astrology. So this is why we see Mars ruling both Aries and Scorpio in traditional astrology. We see this is showing us how important it is to have purpose, how to have power in our lives, but to use those to slay our inner demons and rise above them. It's not to slay others, it's to slay our own issues, to knock those out of ourselves and be able to rise above them, move forward, use that action to change our lives. And that gets mistaken a lot. For I have this purpose and power, and then I use this power on others, and it's never supposed to have been that way. It's using that power to take charge of your own life, change the things you don't like, slay those inner demons, rise above them, and get that life that you've always dreamed of, right? So while we do see many of the Mars associations in like a negative light, I tend to see it a lot of times that it's like that angry push that we need to like spring into action and overcome whatever is in our way. And you know what I mean? Like you've been in a situation where like something is happening, it's bothering you, it's aggravating you, and like you keep ignoring it, or you're just going to say, oh, I'm going to be the bigger person here and I'm not going to do anything about it. But then after a while, you keep getting pushed on that same thing and you keep getting bothered and all this stuff. Eventually, you're going to reach the point of like, okay, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's it. And it'll give you that angry reaction that you need to spring forward into action and make that change, whether that be leaving that situation and setting a boundary that you're not going back. If it's, hey, I've been too hard hitting the alcohol, the drugs, the whatever bad habit that you might have that's, impeding you living a healthy life, and I need to stop that. And you've hit something that's giving you that push, that angry push that you need to stop doing whatever is going on and change it. So I actually see it as it can be like a good thing if used correctly, right? Instead of using that anger that comes up and punching the person that's bothering you, you leave the situation and you change your behavior, or you change the fact that you're not going to always be around them, right? You can't change anybody else, and beating them up ain't going to do anything about that except make them pissed off, and you probably wind up in an orange jumpsuit in jail, right? But you can change your reactions to things. And if you find yourself constantly jumping to anger, we will discuss all about Mars today and how we can, use what we learn about Mars to change that, be more aware of our reactions, and then not do those things that have gotten us in trouble all the time. So without that push, sometimes though, we would stagnate, right? We would never change. We would never fulfill our purpose for this trip around the sun. We would have unfulfilled karma yet again. And when we passed from this life, we would go back up. And when we came back down, we'd have to go through a lot of those same fucking lessons all over again. And so that push is really like our soul telling us, hey, I really don't want to have to come back and learn all these damn lessons over again. So let's change things this time, right? And so that can be a good thing for sure. The element associated with Mars then. If you haven't already guessed it, Mars is associated with fire, the fire element. It is a fire that burns super hot all the time, though. This moves the vital force in like an upward and outward motion, and it can make it really hard for those with a strong Mars placement or with a strong Mars like association in their charts to really keep that vital force inside where they need it the most. And we see this in people who have not integrated Mars well, where they're constantly like kind of feeling run down, but then also like quick to be like angry and upset at people and like volatile and yelling and defensive. All that vital force, all that energy that should be inside of them, keeping them healthy and whole and their vital organs working properly, is being like pushed up and out and like, turning them into this like really volatile person. So we can definitely see that. And trust me, you need that vital force inside of you, because without that, things are going to start breaking down, and then you're going to be not feeling well. You're going to wind up with some kind of disease. Something's going to happen. There's going to be an imbalance in the body, and our bodies are miraculous, amazing things that can really hold off problems from occurring for a really long time when things are out of balance. But eventually, even those backup systems start failing, and then this is when we turn into seeing a bunch of chronic ailments popping up, because our body has been struggling for a long time, and now we're seeing the effects of that. So it's very imperative that that vital force stay inside where you need it. As far as the glyph on the natal chart, it looks like a circle with an arrow pointing up and out toward the right. This is also the sign for male, like that you see like sometimes in the modern medicine system. And the sign for women, FYI, is the glyph for Venus. So that's where we hear that saying, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. So they took the glyphs of those from the natal chart and turned them into the signs for male and female. So there we go. It is easy to spot on a chart usually, but it does look similar to Sagittarius. So if you aren't, adept at reading the charts and you're just new, it is possible to kind of get those confused sometimes. So just be aware, Sagittarius is only an arrow and Mars is a circle with an arrow coming out of it, up, kind of pointing upward and toward the right, which kind of also demonstrates that that vital force in Mars, right, is going upward and outward constantly and having to keep that inside. Mars being associated with men in the male reproductive system, we see that this is really corresponding to that too, because men's hormones refresh every 24 hours. Every 24 hours, they have a brand new set of testosterone and all the other hormones that they have running through their body. They do have a little bit of estrogen, but it's mainly testosterone, and it replenishes every morning. So whatever they depleted the day before will be completely replenished come the next day after they get some sleep, right? Whereas with women, our cycles are 28 to 30 days long. If we get depleted during, let's say, our luteal phase, then we're still going to be depleted the very next week when our menstruation phase comes along, right, where we're bleeding, because our bodies haven't had a chance to replenish anything yet, and we're just moving on to the next phase. And then by the time your period comes, you're exhausted, you can't hardly do anything, you're extra tired, and then when we finally get through that, then our hormones replenish, which is why we all tend to have more energy in our follicular and ovulatory phases, because our hormones are fresh and new and happy, and they haven't had anything happen yet to change that balance. And so we also see that represented in the Venus glyph, which has like an arrow kind of pointing downward, which is where a lot of women's vital force goes, is inward and downward into their pelvic area and their reproductive organs. So all those similarities there. It's really cool. As far as what Mars governs, rules over, and all that fun stuff, we have Mars ruling Aries and Scorpio, which I already mentioned, but just bring it up again. Aries is the ruler of the first house, and it's a March, early spring sign. Scorpio is a late fall sign, and it's the ruler of the 8th house. So Aries is like the initiating sign, and Scorpio is the introspective sign. So here we kind of see the duality of Mars once again with these signs that it rules. There's the first house is basically like I am, right? It's who you are, it's your personality, it's who you are at your core, and how people see you, how you come across to the world. Whereas the 8th house is like your inside, like everything, right? You're in how you feel about yourself, your introspection, your beliefs about you and how you feel about yourself. So you see that opposite quality there. One is all about, yes, this is me, this is who I am, and like your outward persona, but then Scorpio is all about like that inside persona, who you really are, that maybe you don't always show everybody, and that introspection that we all need to make sure that we are, living the lives that we're supposed to live, and that we're not taking that Mars influence and using it against other people, as I mentioned earlier, taking that power and using it to change ourselves and not trying to overpower other people. It's also the ruler of the day, Tuesday in English, which it used to be called Tyr's Day, for Tyr, the Norse god of war. So again, we see that association with war, fighting, action, right? So it used to be Tyr's Day, and now it's Tuesday in English. In French and Spanish, it's very much like, if you ever heard of Mardi Gras, it's called that because it's on a Tuesday. Mardi is Tuesday in French. So that's also that. And you see that association with Mars and March, because March was named after the planet Mars, the Greek, I think Greek, right? Roman? I'm terrible with the Greek and Roman gods. The god of war. So it's, and you see that too reflected in the French name for Tuesday and the Spanish name, and they all have that like beginning part of Mar for March or Mars. We also see body systems under Mars governance as ones that are typically associated with action. So we see Mars having governance over the blood itself, which without we don't live very long. But you also see shed often in war and fighting, right? And it's red, and it requires your heart to have some kind of an action, right, to keep it moving. If your heart quits and the blood stops pumping, there we go. So it is definitely a system of action. It carries vital nutrients and oxygen and everything else that we need to all of the different parts of our body, right? So it's definitely a very active system in your body. We also see the adrenal glands under Mars, which, as we know, the adrenal glands are associated with our fight or flight response, as they make the adrenaline, which pumps into our system when we have a fight or flight response to get us the hell out of the way, to run faster and further, fight off any predators, and it even dulls our pain response. So even if you get injured, you can just keep on going until you get to safety, which is why a lot of times in situations where you come across someone's been in a really bad accident and their leg is really injured, and you see them up walking on a leg that is not actually walkable on right now, and they're doing it and they don't seem to notice, they're not phased, and they're not in pain. It's because that adrenaline is still pumping through their system and it's dulling that pain, it's dulling their response. They're also in shock because traumatic accidents will do that to you, and once that whole thing wears off, they're going to start noticing that there is something wrong with their leg. But we see that a lot. You see that when people are in battle. You hear stories of these, from back in the day, and all these tales from the Greek and Roman mythology of these people that got into battles and they were severely injured and yet still managed to fight off another 100 people or whatever before they died. And it's that surge of adrenaline and keeping them not only going, but also dulling that pain. So they didn't even realize they were injured enough that it was, a mortal wound. They didn't realize that they should have probably left to get aid prior to that. So I've seen it as a nurse. When I was working as a nurse, let me tell you, I have seen that adrenaline do some crazy shit to people in their pain responses, especially. So it is definitely a wonderful thing when needed. Unfortunately, in modern society, most of our stress response is not to actually run away from predators, but it's to meet a deadline, and we get all that adrenaline running through our system that we don't actually need because there's nothing to actually run away from, and we can get really overtaxed, burned out adrenals because they're constantly being fired up when they're only supposed to be used for emergencies, and they're constantly under this, go, 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 when we don't actually need them to make us go, go, go. When adrenaline starts pumping as well, it also shunts blood away from what the body considers non-priority systems. And this means that it does that to help ensure that more blood and oxygen gets to the places necessary for us to be able to escape. So our heart, our muscles, our lungs to make sure that we're getting, make us speed up our breathing so that we're inhaling more oxygen and the heart's pumping faster so we can get that extra oxygen faster. And sometimes you will see that a lot of people too get like really quick like reflexes because their brain is actually getting so much oxygen that it's firing a lot faster, and they're able to react to things that normally, if they're like me in a giant clutch, they're gonna like trip over air, right? But now all of a sudden they have like the reflexes of a ninja, and that's because again they're kind of working on instinct and not on like sight alone, and they have this adrenaline that's giving them extra oxygen. But unfortunately, when it shunts that blood away from the quote unquote non-priority systems, this can mean a lot of things for your health overall. So if you're in a constantly stressed out state, your sleep goes to shit, your digestion goes to shit, your nervous system is overwrought, overworked, constantly on edge, you got that nervous burnout going, your neuroendocrine systems don't function as they should, which if you continue in this state for a long time, it leads to health issues because our body is not designed to be in a constant fight or flight state, right? So Mars also governs our immune system, which, if you're in a constant fight or flight state, also gets shunted around during the fight or flight response, the constantly stressed out response. Because let's think about it, if you're trying to get away from a predator, does it really matter if you're also going to be fighting off whatever random germ you happen to pick up while being attacked by this predator? Not exactly at that moment in time. The most pressing matter of what's going to kill you first is going to be whatever is attacking you, not necessarily whatever germ managed to make it inside your body, right? So your body is going to prioritize getting your entire body the hell to safety before it decides to start fighting off whatever happened to also invade your body while you were in that situation or prior to it. So this can mean that if you find yourself constantly sick, you could either have a Mars that is not well aspected in your chart, or you have a stress response from whatever's going on in your life that is inhibiting your immune response from happening. With this association to the immune system, though, we also see the immune response of fevers. When one is sick, right, many times a high fever comes up seemingly out of nowhere, helps heat up your system to keep whatever is trying to start shit from being unable to do that. And so fevers are good, and they're necessary for a healthy immune system. But they also can make you feel a little bit miserable. A good rule of thumb, though, is to refrain from treating the fever until it's over 103 degrees Fahrenheit, 39 degrees Celsius for adults, and 102 or 38 degrees Celsius in children. And this doesn't mean like you completely ignore it. This means that you're helping the body with this response. You're doing tepid baths, you're doing like peppermint tea or feverfew or elder to help the body modulate this response, helping it, stay down, but also allowing it to kind of do its job so that you can burn out whatever the fuck is going on in there. And then this will greatly decrease the amount of time you spend ill because your body has time to mount that response. One of the things that I learned in nursing school was you treat the person, not the fever. So like if someone in my family has a fever and it's nighttime and they're not able to sleep because it's high and they're bothered and they need sleep, obviously if you're going to get better, sleep is also necessary, then yeah, go ahead, treat the fever, make sure they get some rest, and then in the morning during the day, go back to the other stuff. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but just know that the more you stop the fever from happening in the body, the more likely your body is to stop mounting an immune response properly when something does happen, is not going to be able to modulate it as it should. So this is what leads to high fevers that spike really high and don't come down with anything because the body has not had any chance to ever be able to modulate its own reactions, and it overreacts because it doesn't have those normal things built into it as it should because it hasn't ever had a chance. If you start immediately giving stuff to get the fever to go down, your body never has a chance to learn, where its parameters are. And it can lead to other things then happening. So it's definitely good to keep an eye on them, obviously, but try to only treat them if it's gotten to a point where it's above those parameters or the person that has the fever is trying to get some rest and is unable to do so. Mars also rules the musculoskeletal system, the male reproductive system, which is also a Scorpio-ruled area, if you remember from the signs that we did, and the gallbladder. The gallbladder is actually considered a hot organ, especially in like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, which a lot of people find weird because it doesn't really seem like it does much in the body. But it stores the bile produced by the liver and it secretes it when you eat to help digest and break down fats and oils. So it's really a very essential component to our digestive fire, or as it's called in Ayurveda, our Agni, right? And so it's really essential. And this is why, as much as yes, we can live without a gallbladder, doing anything in your power to keep that gallbladder inside of you is so much better, because the liver's job is to produce the bile, but not secrete it into the system. It secretes it into the gallbladder, and the gallbladder secretes it as it needs it. And the gallbladder is really damn good at that job, only usually secreting exactly what is needed for that. The liver, on the other hand, when you take that gallbladder out, and now it has to not only make the bile, but then secrete it, and it's just, that's not its primary function, and it's not very good at its job. And this is why you see a lot of people who struggle with eating any kind of like high fat meal after a gallbladder is removed, because their liver doesn't know how much, and it can put out too much, which can then cause diarrhea, or it can put out too little, and then you get constipation sometimes, or you just get upset stomach because those fats aren't being broken down, and you get stools that are floating in the toilet. If your stools are floating in the toilet, your gallbladder may be struggling if you have one, and if you don't have one, that's definitely a sign that things are struggling. And so it wouldn't hurt to add some like dandelion root tea into your daily intake, usually morning and evening. Sometimes before each meal actually really helps too, because that helps prime the body, and it really helps the liver and gallbladder along the way in doing what they're supposed to be doing. As far as symbols go, different things that we see being associated with Mars is obviously a warrior. So like Aries, Tyr are the two main ones that really come up. And then in the tarot, we see it corresponding with the Tower card. As far as astronutrition goes, Mars governs so many nutrients. So I really don't have time to like deep dive into all of them as much as I have in the previous episodes, but I want to hit the high points at least, so you got some ideas of, all that. That being said, the vitamins governed by Mars include vitamin B12, folic acid, and fatty acids, which are also known as vitamin F. It also governs a bunch of minerals: chlorine, cobalt, iron, molybdenum. I'm terrible at saying that one, I'm sorry. It's MOLYBDENUM. Phosphorus, selenium, and sodium. So just going to hit a few because that is way too many to go over every single one. But vitamin B12, many of you know this is like the energy vitamin, right? If you're feeling low on energy, you take a large amount of B12. It can help kick your energy levels up into high gear. So you kind of see where Mars is governing B12, right? Because it's the planet of action. It's also known as cyanocobalamin, and it's red in color. So we see that as a correspondence to Mars as well. This is a unique vitamin in the fact that it's the only vitamin to also contain elements of a mineral inside of it. So you can find cobalt inside this vitamin as well. A small amount of B12 is manufactured in our intestines, but it's immediately used by the intestines for its different functions, so it's very essential to take this daily as well. Low vitamin B12 over a period of time can lead to pernicious anemia, which is a form of anemia where the red blood cells are decreased in number. Like your body just doesn't have the proper tools to make all of the red blood cells that it needs, and so it doesn't make as many, and so over time you get less and less, because as they get used up, right, your body cycles through your red blood cells. As they get used up, they get old, your body gets rid of the old ones and pumps out new ones. Well, this system is not working super well because the old ones are being sent out of the system, and your body's only making half or a quarter of the new ones that it needs to make to replace the old ones. So after a while, you get very anemic because your body can't hold on to the proper amounts of iron and oxygen that it needs, because you don't have enough red blood cells to carry all the amounts that your body needs to function properly. So This is typically remedied by taking injections of vitamin B12 because vitamin B12 is really hard to be absorbed properly and effectively if you have any kind of digestion issues, GI issues, lots of stress in your life can make it hard to absorb enough of this. So injections tend to be one of the most common ways that if you have pernicious anemia, they correct that by giving injections of large amounts of vitamin B12. It's more effectively absorbed in your body when you take it orally with the entire vitamin B complex. So taking a B complex plus vitamin, which makes sure it has all the B vitamins in it, not just the most common ones. Also, if you take it, especially if you take it with choline, folic acid, and inositol, which are also part of that B complex. There is a very close relationship between folic acid and B12, so getting enough of that is a good idea as well. Getting the folic acid in a folate form is usually better for a lot of people because you could potentially have a gene that doesn't allow you to absorb folic acid properly, but it will let you do folate usually. And then if those levels get too low, you can have all kinds of neurological issues as well. So it's good to take the folate because without testing, you're not going to know if you have that faulty gene or not. And it can be, excuse me, it can be quite expensive to get done. All right, so also making sure you're getting adequate amounts of vitamin C, which is a Saturn ruled vitamin, and we see Saturn and Mars are opposites of each other, as well as vitamin A, potassium, and sodium, like those electrolytes I push all of the time, right? Those increase the effectiveness of vitamin B12 as well. As far as food sources, you can find B12 in green peas, prunes, beef liver, beef kidney, chicken, raw clams and oysters, crayfish, trout, sardines, cooked crab, cottage cheese, eggs, Swiss cheese, and skim milk. And as far as herb goes, you can find them in bladderwrack and alfalfa. The optimal daily intake levels should be 50 to 100 micrograms daily. Moving on to folic acid, aka folate, which is the best form of this for many people. Folic acid's main job is to be a carbon carrier in the formation of heme, which is an iron-containing non-protein portion of the hemoglobin molecule. Anyways, that's needed to form healthy red blood cells, right? It also works as a coenzyme with vitamins B12 and C in the breakdown and use of protein that you have taken in your diet. It is most effective when taken with the rest of the B complex vitamins, especially biotin, pantothenic acid, which is also B5, and vitamin C. You can find it in spinach, asparagus, beet greens, kale, endive, turnips, potatoes, broccoli, chard, black-eyed peas, lima beans, avocados, dried dates, plums, liver, kidney, lamb, cottage cheese, and brewer's yeast. And optimal daily levels are 5 to 10 milligrams daily. Vitamin F, also known as fatty acids. These are found mainly in cold-pressed oils, also known as linoleic acid in a lot of things too. So if you see that, that's also the same thing. It also can be found in avocados, sunflower seeds, chicken, pork, canned sardines, tuna, eggs, that kind of stuff. Vitamin F is actually a group of fatty acids rather than just one component like the other vitamins. And these do play a continual part in the respiration and oxygenation processes to all the cells, tissues, and organs. So they help maintain the structure of cells and keep the endocrine glands happy, especially the adrenal glands, which, as we know, are ruled by Mars. So they help maintain an overall blood coagulation rate and help break up cholesterol deposits in the arteries. They also keep the skin, hair, and nails happy and healthy. Most effective when taken with vitamins E, C, and D. And the optimal daily levels, there's really no current answer that I could find that it's, this, but it is recommended to make sure that you're getting a good amount of those cold pressed oils and healthy fats in your diet daily. So I'm only going to hit the two main minerals that Mars rules to save time and not bore you to death. Haha. I hope you're not bored to death, but if you are, I apologize. So the first one is iron, also known as ferrous fumarate, ferrous gluconate, or ferrous sulfate. Iron is one of the most important minerals in the body. It's found in the red blood cells mainly, and its main function is to unite copper, which is ruled by Venus, with protein to make hemoglobin, which carries oxygen and also gives our blood the red color that it is. It also helps make myoglobin, which transports oxygen to the muscles so they have the ability to contract properly. Unfortunately, as much as we need this crucial mineral, it is one of the hardest ones to assimilate. It is very difficult to absorb for many people. It's very difficult to hold on to, but it's very easy to lose. So, yikes. So, good things to do is to make sure that, especially if you are a woman who still has the bleeding phase of their menstrual cycle, to do is eat a high iron rich diet. So foods high in iron are imperative, as well as getting iron from a good source of herbs, which we'll go over. So good sources are any kind of greens, spinach, beets, alfalfa, dried beans and lentils, broccoli, collards, green peas, leeks, mushrooms, onions, olives, soybeans, watercress, apples, avocados, blackberries, almonds, sunflower seeds, walnuts, sesame seeds, carob, liver, beef, kidney, chicken and lamb, whole grains, brown rice, egg yolks. And that is not even the entire list. That is just a very minimal part of the extensive list. So you can always look up more sources as well for yourself. As far as herbs go, yellow dock is amazing. It's actually, if you look at it, use the root, yellow dock root, it is about 40% iron. So that's one of the best ones. Just a word of caution, if you're going to take it, it is very bitter because it is a root, and it does not taste the greatest that way. It's best as a tincture because of that. It also, if taken in too large amounts, will give you diarrhea because it helps the gallbladder function better and put out more bile, which is good if you need more bile in your system, and if you don't, then diarrhea it is. So start at a very low quantity and work your way up. There's also meadowsweet, mullein, and stinging nettles, as well as Floridix, which is a herbal iron supplement, which I recommend to a lot of my female clients who are suffering with like long or heavy periods that are just draining and exhausting to them. A lot of times it's because your iron is starting to drop as well from all of that excessive bleeding. And that one is really easy on the stomach and it doesn't cause constipation like a lot of iron supplements do. So it's a good one to put in to your rotation. It comes in a gluten-free version as well for those who need that. So I love it all around. It's great. You can also find it in kelp, dulce, molasses. Molasses is really iron rich, but it tastes like shite. So if you like it, more power to you. Take a tablespoon of it a day. But if you're like me and just the thought of it makes you sick to your stomach, you can find it in the other food sources instead. Brewer's yeast and desiccated liver capsules have it as well. Optimal daily intake. So at minimum, women need 18 milligrams daily and men need 10 milligrams daily. But in my experience, I have found that somewhere between 20 to 100 milligrams for women is even better because most of us are having a cycle, right, where we're bleeding all the time, once a month minimum. And for some of us, those are a lot longer. And ironically, one of the signs of low iron can actually be heavier periods, which I know makes no sense because now you're just losing more iron, but that unfortunately is how it goes. So taking a little bit more closer to your period is never a bad idea, though you can take too much. So just pay attention to how you feel and back off if you need to. Remember, if you are eating the iron-rich foods as well, that does cover some of that intake. So you don't need to always supplement on top of that if you feel like you're eating these iron-rich foods and your body feels good, right? Sodium is the next one. This mineral is absolutely essential for life. Without it, we die, right? Like sodium is found in so many different things anymore because they put it in so many processed foods for taste and preservations and whatever else. So it's really easy to overdo it in some cases. Though what I find is if you're doing good quality salts and little to no processed foods, that it's not so much an issue. So cutting out processed foods as much as possible and sticking to a nutrient-dense whole foods diet is the best way to ensure that you're not overdoing the sodium. So the adrenal glands are really necessary for this mineral as well because it really helps balance the sodium and potassium relationship. Sodium and potassium have a direct bearing on each other and should usually be found in a 2-to-1 ratio in the body, so potassium to sodium, so 2 parts potassium to 1 part sodium. Potassium's job is to stay inside the cells and help pull water in. Sodium stays outside of the cells and helps draw water to the cells, and then the potassium gets it. Calcium and potassium work together to get it inside of the cell. If the sodium decides that it doesn't want to sit outside the cell anymore and it wants to go inside and hang out with potassium, this is when we start getting swelling and edema. And a lot of times I find that when people have that, it's not necessarily because they've been intaking too much sodium. A lot of times it's because they've been intaking sodium but not also intaking potassium. So you need to make sure you got lots of potassium in your diet as well to help keep this balance as it should be, because it's really crucial for your body, and the adrenal glands are really crucial in this balance. And if you're stressed out all the time and your adrenal glands are getting overworked, then this balance can be easily knocked off as well. Better forms of sodium to include in your diet are Celtic sea salt, gray salt, a brand called Real Salt that's mined here in the US, and then pink Himalayan salt. Sodium is better absorbed and used when potassium, calcium, B5, and vitamin D are present. In those forms of sodium I just mentioned, they also contain the minerals necessary. The potassium and calcium, magnesium's in there, a few other things, trace minerals, to help our bodies use that sodium better. So they actually are better for you than like that iodized white table salt where they have pulled all of the minerals out of it. It's just the sodium. That is not good. Our bodies need more than just the sodium. So that stuff is more problematic than not. So getting the other salts is better for your body, for many people. Sources of sodium in like food naturally includes carrots, beets, asparagus, romaine lettuce, okra, watercress, watermelon, bacon, ham, salted pork, salted fish, seafood, milk, cottage cheese, cream cheese, and obviously most processed foods, especially anything canned and especially soup. If you look at a can of soup and like one can is a serving usually for a person, there can be up to 3,000 milligrams of sodium in one can of soup. So just avoid canned soup and make your own. No optimal level has really been established for this. Just obviously you don't want to underdo it or overdo it if you're not also taking like potassium, magnesium, calcium with it, right? Herbs you can find it in is black willow, chives, cleavers, fennel seed, meadowsweet, stinging nettle, and kelp. So seaweeds, basically. Let's move into the positive correspondences then. So when we're talking about the positive correspondences of Mars, when someone has a really well integrated Mars, we will see them as someone who's strong, reliable, energetic, outgoing. They express their truth and they're fully aligned in their power of spirit, right? They're like the way of the peaceful warrior. It's someone who knows their own power. They know what they can do. They know they could wreck somebody else's life, right? But they don't feel the need to run around telling everybody that or showing that off. They are good at holding on to that power and not diminishing themselves, their powers, and their accomplishments, but they also don't give their power away easily to other people. They don't allow people to come and like steal their peace, take their power, come in and start fucking up their lives. Like, they are confident in who they are, what they can do, and they don't need to run around proving it to anybody, right? Their action and willpower will be aligned to their divine purpose. So what they do is a reflection of who they are and not always in line with a culturally conditioned ego. They don't feel the need to prove anything to anybody or prove that they're the biggest, baddest person out there or anything, right? And that culturally conditioned ego where, you got to run around pretending to be something you're not sometimes, and they don't feel that need. So these will be people that sometimes come across a little eccentric to others, or a little like weird or standoffish because they don't always fit into places where everybody else there tends to be more like socially and culturally conditioned to behave a certain way, right? There will be a commitment, though, and a dedication to stand up for what is good, right, true, a willingness to defend and fight for the good in the world. And when in good integration, we see this as an outward expression as well as an inward expression. So they're not only good at helping others, they're also good at conquering their demons and healing themselves. So it's the way of like the peaceful warrior who's also like a healer, if that makes sense. As far as when we move into the negative expression, though, in the negative or poor integration, we see someone who is raging out of control. They have fits of anger, frustration, intensity, and they seem to be addicted to that intensity. Like if it's not wild and out of control, they don't want it. They like drama in their life. They're highly defensive and reactive. They're constantly on edge. They're looking for a fight. And if they don't find one, they will go make one. They are just like everything around them is like chaos constantly. They are chaotic in their personality. They are chaotic in their nature. Every time you go around them and you feel drained because everything is a big deal. Everything's drama. Everything's chaos. And it's exhausting, let me tell you. They are volatile, scattered, and they're without direction. Much like a war can be, right? Like you see that correspondence there. How many wars have you ever read about, learned about, seen currently going on in action that are really super well organized and everything goes exactly as whatever each side has planned, right? That never happens. It's chaotic and it's crazy and there's bloodshed and all kinds of insane things that happen, and it's just like chaos in action. That's what these people are like. It's like there's constantly a battle going on around them, and if there's not, they go make one. So we also can see like a rigidity and a need to feel domination, to power over other people. This can be subtle, right? Such as manipulation, tactics, and things like that, emotional manipulation, physical manipulation. Or it can be very blatant, where they're physically trying to overpower another person. It is an abuse of power that can become deeply set in a person with a strong Mars quality that's not integrating it in a positive way. We also can see, though, kind of on the opposite side of this a little bit, someone who is deficient in Mars in their chart is someone who feels really like helpless, powerless, without strength or will. They're constantly fearful. They lack confidence and purpose, and they feel out of alignment with their actions, matching what their soul wants them to be doing. And they just constantly feel like they're drifting along with nothing, and there's no ability to change anything. Like, they're like, yeah, I really wish my life was different. And then do nothing to change it, right? You can't just wish for change. You got to start taking the steps toward that change. Nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And so we can see that occurring as well. Somebody who is deficient in Mars is not always a volatile, chaotic person. Sometimes they're the weak-willed, lacking of confidence person instead. As far as herbs associated with Mars, we see nettles, stinging nettles in particular. If you touch stinging nettles, they give you a nice stinging, hence the name, burning sensation to your hands, kind of similar to like how you feel like it would be if you touched Mars because it's so hot. But if you take it internally as a herb, it has the antipathetic action on that hot, drying Mars quality. So it's very cooling to the body, and it doesn't really necessarily bring moisture. It is a little drying, but it helps the kidneys work better so that they filter your blood better and faster and quicker and easier, and they just really assist the kidneys in doing their job so that it helps your electrolyte balance and it helps your blood quality and it just helps cool the body down, right? So it has that antipathetic action. So if these are great, if someone has an excess of Mars in their life or an excess heat in the body, to take those to help cool things. Yellow dock, I mentioned earlier. This herb is, like I said, mainly like you use the roots. It corresponds to Mars because it's chock full of iron. Cayenne, I know people think this is not a herb, but it is. This herb is very hot and drying. I mean, most people know it's spicy, so spicy stuff tends to be hot and it tends to be drying a lot of times. just like Mars is, but sometimes it can be used to help draw the heat from a person's body as well. So you've heard of like the capsaicin creams where you rub them on like your knee that's inflamed and hurts to help with the pain. It's actually because it's helping draw like blood to the surface and help, and not only help whatever's going on heal, but also helping release some of that heat and stuff from there. So if you use it sparingly, if you are a very hot person, it can help with inflammation, but if you do too much, it can have the opposite action, and then you get back into too much inflammation. So it's a fine balance. Elder is also here. You can use the leaves, the flowers, and the berries of this plant. The flowers are more of a Mars relation because the flowers help the body modulate fevers, and they help bring blood to the surface of the skin to release heat. So they are really good, especially for fevers caused by the flu, like influenza, not like the stomach flu. So they're really good for helping that. Now, as far as ways to balance Mars, if you feel like you have too much Mars in your chart, lots of inflammation, fatigue, low iron, heavy periods, maybe you're a little bit ragey, and chaotic. You really need to add more Venus into your life, and you can do this via the Venus ruled herbs. I will go over these in the Venus episode, but mainly you want cooling and moistening herbs, so they're similar to the moon ruled herbs. And in fact, you can also use moon ruled herbs like I talked about in the moon episode. So those are ones definitely good to add. Hydration, hydration, hydration. I know. You're sick of hearing me say hydration, but without enough water in your life, so many health problems can start to occur. So combine it with that element, use that referral link, make sure that you are retaining all the water you were drinking. Movement. If you're having inflammation, sometimes it can be caused by not enough movement or action throughout the day. Our lymphatic system needs movement. Without it, swelling can occur. It could also be a sign that your sodium and your potassium levels are in balance. So get some sodium and some potassium inside of you via element if you want. If you are deficient in Mars, so you have like a lack of confidence, willpower, fatigue, no ability to start anything, add more spicy herbs and veggies into your life. That can really help because it can help pick up that digestive fire. Get outside in the sun to get rid of some of that stress. If you are constantly feeling like you're just so tired all the time, you don't want to start anything, everything feels like it's too much, it's chaotic, you could be on the edge of like adrenal system burnout or nervous system burnout because you're constantly in a stress, fight, or flight reaction. Get outside in the sun, get outside in nature, go swimming in the water to cool that stuff down, right? Get somewhere, do something that helps relieve that stress before you wind up in the hospital because of stress-induced issues. Sun and Mars are very similar, right? So getting plenty of sun can help with a deficient Mars as well. And movement, I know, you are lacking the motivation to do anything, which can not make it easy. But what if I told you that motivation actually follows action, not the other way around? Once you start doing, the motivation to continue doing comes from that starting. Motivation is used incorrectly by many people, where you have to have the motivation and then you can start. But that's not really true. First you start and then the motivation to continue shows up. So you have to start. Start small. Increase your steps daily first. First go walk around the house, like inside the house. If leaving it is too hard and going outside, then, increase that to going outside, and then increase that to going to the gym if that works for you, or whatever, But start small, start with baby steps, and you will get there. And you can always add in one or more of the herbs mentioned as a daily tea to help increase Mars in your life. It can also help decrease Mars depending on how you're using it, which one you're using. So that can help as well. Checking out where Mars is located in your chart and in what sign. This can help you figure out how your body likes to take action, and this can help you learn to work with your body instead of against it. Like my Mars is in Virgo. Virgo is a planner. It likes steps. It likes to know what the fuck is going to happen, and it does not like surprises. And so I'm like, okay, for me to feel like I can start the action, I need a plan. I know this about myself. So I make a plan, and then guess what? I get started, and before I know it, I got the motivation, and I finished 500 things that weren't even on the list because that motivation followed because I know what my body needs to get the action moving, right? So use that information to help you. All right, that is it for Mars. I was trying to keep this episode not too long, but I don't know how well I did with that. So how is Mars showing up in your life? Comment, let me know. Come to the Instagram channel, Alchemy Astrology and Astro Health Podcast. Let me know on there. If you're interested in knowing more about your cosmic blueprint and how to use Mars to your benefit, head over to atlaastrology.com. Sign up for a reading today, and I will see you then. Until next time, love and light. All right. I know. You are sick of me telling you to drink water and take electrolytes. But let me tell you, it's totally worth it. This is why I love Element so much, though. It's because they are science backed. They're formulated to contain just the right amount of sodium, potassium, magnesium to ensure that all of that water that I encourage you to drink on a daily basis in pretty much every episode is going to go where it needs to, is going to stay there, right? There is no point in drinking so much water daily if you're just going to pee most of it right back out. No one wants to be living in the bathroom. I'm sure that less time in the bathroom is definitely a plus there. And if you have been wanting to check out Element, I have a good news for you. I actually have a referral link now that you can use to purchase Element through. And in doing so, you receive a free sample pack with your first order through that link. This only applies to the first order currently, but hey, free is free, am I right? So, if you are ready to up your hydration game, keep that gallon of water I am making you drink daily inside your body, click that referral link in the show notes and go snatch you up some Element today. My favorite flavors are raspberry salt, citrus salt, and the chocolate salts. They have a chocolate mint that is delicious and it goes really great with a protein shake, a chocolate protein shake. After I've had a really hard workout, it helps replenish me. It gives me all the potassium, sodium, and magnesium that I just sweated out back, as well as tasting delicious. It's great in hot chocolate and coffee as well. So, perfect times. They are great for cold weather mainly. I do not like them as much in the summer, the chocolate ones, but the other ones are great. You can add a dash of sweet and salty to your favorite warm beverage. So go now to the link, get your free sample pack of Element today with your first order. Enjoy it. Let me know what you think about it because it's my absolute fucking favorite electrolyte brand. And that's that. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Alchemy, Astrology, and Astro Health. I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed making it. You can find all relevant links to today's show in the show notes below. If you loved the show today, please subscribe, follow, and leave me a review. I love to hear your thoughts, and it helps me know what is a hit and to make more of that content, especially for you. If you want to learn more about me and how I can help you, head over to atlaastrology.com. There you can sign up for a medical astrology package, download my free sun sign in your health ebook, read the blog, and so much more. If you want to connect more outside the podcast, follow my Instagram channel @atlaastrology or join my Astro Connection community, the link to which you can find in the show notes. Until next time, love and light.